From the mysteries of the universe to the mysteries of the unknown, this is Mysterious Realms with Mr. Cyber. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Here is your host, Mr. Cyber.
Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Mysterious Realms. I am Elijah, aka Mr. Cyber. I know it's been a while. Lots going on in the world, but everything is great. I hope all of you are doing good. But we are back with a great interview today. So with wit, wisdom, and wow are synonymous with Dr. Mary Helen Hensley. Her marriage of no-holds-barred humor and honesty coupled with integrity and compassion make her one of Ireland and Europe's most sought-after metaphysical healers and speakers. After receiving a Bachelor's of Arts in Communications and Graphic Design in South Carolina, Mary Helen was involved in a high-speed collision in Charleston, South Carolina, which resulted in a near-death experience. Riddled with injuries, including a broken neck, she went on to earn a doctorate in chiropractic at Sherman College of Chiropractic in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Endowed with the gift of downloading an individual's biography in order to change their present-day state biology, Dr. Hensley has facilitated the healing process for countless individuals. Author of 9 books, including Promised by Heaven, co-author of the #1 bestseller, Bringing Death to Life, and Understanding is the New Healing, Miraculous, Recoveries from Physical and Emotional Trauma. So Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, so she grew up in the United States, in the South, and now she lives in Ireland. And we're going to go in depth on how this played out, what started early in her life, all the way till now. She's a great guest to have, and her insight into a lot of events that happened are pretty spectacular. I just wanted to plug this as well. On July 8th, coming up, she's going to be on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and it's an honor to have her as our guest today. So without further ado, here is Dr. Mary Helen Hensley. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, not a problem. It's a real privilege to have you on. I've been looking forward to our interview for quite a few months, and finally got you on. So I appreciate you being with us. I know the audience is going to love this interview, but I want to go back to the very beginning. Where does this whole story start, or this journey? Let's put it that way.
Well, you know what? It all depends on where somebody is in their own story, where they end up picking up mine, if you get me.
Yeah.
The reality of this, like loads of people read my books and they're like, oh, they're into the near-death thing, and it all started with the accident and when I died and came back. And I'm like, it actually really starts way before that. And my parents, my mom was in her early 40s when she had me. Mm-hmm. And so during the first trimester of her pregnancy, she found out that she had the German measles. And so back in the day, that would have been, I was born in 1969, so that would have been in 1968. This was not good news. Yeah. And in the first trimester of pregnancy, they're basically like, your child is, absolutely going to have special needs. And it'll vary from blindness, deafness, limb loss. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things that they terrified my parents with. And so that was it. And they were sent home to kind of get their heads around the fact that they had, to wait a few more months to find out what exactly was going to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting is that my father, in one of his many jobs, he was a minister. And he was not the typical, you know a lot about the South.
Oh, of course.
And he wasn't your typical kind of holy roller, Bible belt, Bible thumping kind of preacher. He was a football coach. Okay. He was a world champion weightlifter. And so people loved his sermons because they were always about sports. And so he always had these great audiences because he could tell best stories relating the parables of the scriptures with something having to do with sports. Mm-hmm. And so my dad, though, was, he was very much so a Christian man, and he had whatever that meant to him. He was definitely a Christian, and he had to explain that in the course of my mother's pregnancy, he had what he called a celestial visit, a visit from these celestial beings. He couldn't and wouldn't say they were angels because with his Christian background, his concept, kind of the accepted motif for appearances of these kind of things, these angels would have wings. Well, these didn't.
Yeah.
These were beings. And so here's the very straight-laced Christian minister who gets this visit from these celestial beings who tell him, not only is your daughter going to be okay, but your daughter's going to come in with some unusual ability. Wow. But remember, 68, we don't have any kind of gender reveal or any ultrasounds going on here.
Yeah.
And so he's just been told that I'm a girl, A, and that B, I'm going to have no problems. And sure enough, when I was born, there were no physical problems. Emotional problems are debatable, but no, I had no problems to speak of. And so anytime I got into trouble when I was a kid, or anytime something bad happened to me or something difficult, my father would tell me I was promised. And so that's how the title of my very first book came to pass, was he had been promised by these beings. And so I guess my parents kind of hung around waiting, because in this visit, if you're told that this child that's coming is going to have unusual abilities, you're kind of waiting. Like, what are they talking about? Can she fly? Does she have laser vision? What's going on here? And so they waited and waited. And it was my first recollection of anything to do with this would have been at the age of 4, when we had what I refer to as the kitchen table talk. Now, my dad, the big weightlifting Southern Baptist minister, he was a huge man, and he had this just booming voice and that deep Southern accent. And he sat little me at 4 years old down at the kitchen table, and he said, "Sugar, do you know the difference between what it means to be alive or dead?"
At 4 years old?
I was 4.
Wow.
The reason he asked me this question is because my best friend in the world, the man that I did everything with, his birthday was actually yesterday, was my grandfather, Dr. Garland Clark. Now, we called him Judge. That was his nickname. And Judge did everything. He taught me everything when I was a child. And he was just a huge part of my life. He still is. And so my parents had to sit me down finally on that day, because they were completely unnerved, because I would talk about Judge, and I would talk about things that only Judge could have told me. And it turns out that Judge had died when I was 1.
What?
So this is where my parents first get that taste of, oh, this is what they were talking about.
Wow.
So at the tender age of 4, they're realizing that I'm communicating with those who aren't operating on this plane of existence.
And one of those individuals was your grandfather, Dr. Garland Clark, Judge.
Yeah. So my mother, she was delighted, because this was her daddy.
Yeah.
And she was just thrilled, A, to know he was okay, and B, to know that her youngest child was communicating with him. So it was so amazing. And so, I had such wonderful, he's my companion, he's my guide, mm-hmm. and he still is to this day. And, yeah, it's pretty incredible. That's how it all began. And so thus began the journey for my parents. So it was difficult for all of us, because we came with no manual, and they tried to understand me within the confines of the dogma of their religion and their chosen way of viewing life and the world we live in, mm-hmm. The best that they could. And so, we tried to meet somewhere in between. And I think all of us did the best we could. I think my father was most concerned about the fact that somebody was going to find out and exploit me. And so from early on, when I started showing signs of seeing things before they happened, or having prophetic dreams, or talking to the dead, my dad was like, let's don't talk about this.
Yeah.
And it's not something you need to be ashamed of. It's a gift from God. But he tried to say, basically, I'm trying to protect you. I don't want people to make fun of you. He was, because I'm sure it unnerved him to his core.
Well, you know what? Being a father, it completely makes sense where he's coming from. It's like a catch-22. He gets it, but at the same time,
he didn't want to get it.
Yeah, I know. It's wow. So what age did you realize that? Because I know at 4 years old, I remember kind of when I was 4, a little bit. But what age did you realize, okay, this isn't like a normal thing that people experience, except for like a select few? Was there an age you recall?
When you kind of get into that, you're 8, you're 9, 10, and you're at a sleepover, and you can see things, or see somebody's grandmother, or do whatever, and you can't say anything. Mm-hmm. Like I knew kind of from 4, to be honest, to watch my P's and Q's. I was very free to talk about it to parents, but even my siblings didn't know. Wow.
So it was very tight-lipped, except for that small little crowd of like your mom and dad and.
Exactly. And so then it just unfolded, and it would, it turned into dreams. And then, of course, my father being the minister, the big joke between us was, if he didn't have enough info for a eulogy,
he would go to you. Hey, sweetie, I need something for the sermon tomorrow.
Yep. So, yeah. And so then, you turn into a teenager, and you get into those years where you kind of like, you don't want to be different. Mm-hmm. And so I just never really did anything with it. And it would happen. I couldn't do anything about that, but, it was interesting because, by the time I got to college, that's when it really started to change for me. Because, you're 18 years old, and you've gone off to college for the first time, and you're doing all the fun stuff and the parties and all this. The last thing you're like really trying to think of is like saving the world.
Yeah.
And, but the stuff's still happening. So you've grown up. It's very easy to see, when people go, gosh, how could somebody have gone through abuse at an early age and never said anything? Very easily, because it's really easy once you've been conditioned to hold something, a secret. It's very easy to carry that into adulthood. And so it was just kind of like, I don't talk about this. Well, now for the first time in my life, I'm living in the same room as somebody, because we all had roommates and suite mates. So finally one day, the girl that I was living with, she was like, what is going on? What is this? Because she could know there was just weird stuff would happen. And also I didn't sleep. I catnapped. It was, that was my way of trying to prevent myself from seeing something disturbing, from seeing the loss of one of my own family members, or from being, bothered with something that was always tapping me on the shoulder. And so, I would catnap during the day, and I was awake all night long. That's when I became an insomniac, and I learned that habit, and it has served me well all of my life.
So you're telling me I'm not alone in that field?
Oh gosh, no. Are you kidding? I'm the most creative between 2 and 4.
Same here. I'm only creative at night.
Yeah.
There's something about that. I know it's off topic, but there is something about.
The veil is thin, the vibes are high.
That is true.
And, yeah. So, what I was doing at the time, I kind of filled my roommate in on it. And so she, oh my God, fruit, like, this is amazing. And, we were cheerleaders. And so I would write down the scores of the basketball games, and we'd stick it in an envelope, throw it into the underwear drawer. We'd go cheer at the game. Everybody come back to our place, crack open a beer, and I'd read out the score. And that was of my service to humanity.
Oh my gosh.
And so then when I graduated from college, I was actually dating a guy who was from Charleston, South Carolina. And back in the day, if you graduated college and you were still with your sweetheart, you moved in that direction.
Yeah.
And, your mom was picking out the crystal and the china patterns and the whole 9 yards. And so I moved to Charleston. And so I had been in Charleston for about 6 months. I graduated in May. And I was working with my big college degrees at a sign company, not making signs, not selling signs, mopping the floor. Best thing that ever happened to me. And two of my greatest mentors, Frank and Teresa Coyne, they were like, you're gonna remember this because you're gonna own your own businesses one day, and you need to know how to do it from the bottom up. And they were wonderful. They were also the first people to say to me, outside of my family, the world's not what you think it is. And it was incredible. And so on December 14th, 1991, it was a very warm day in Charleston, and we were having our company Christmas party, and I was wearing a Santa Claus t-shirt and bright red Bermuda shorts, and I had on a Jingle Bell necklace. And I was about to become one of those statistics where they say accidents happen less than 2 miles away from home.
Yeah.
And I pulled up to a stoplight, and I was going to have to go across the traffic and turn left towards town. So I went through, to have to cross several lanes of traffic. And this is a major highway, Highway 17.
Oh, I know 17 very well.
Yep. That all happened.
Yep.
So there I was at the stoplight, and I'm going, I'm waiting for my light to turn green. And so I'm waiting. My light finally turns green. I make it across all the lanes of traffic until I get to that last lane. And when I got to cross that last lane, I looked left, and there was a car barreling towards me. So the police estimated it was 75 miles an hour that he was going. And it was in that moment that everything just ground to a halt. It just time stood still. And I was sitting there going, oh yeah. Oh, okay. I'm getting ready to die again. And for the first time in my life at that stage, I'm 21 years old. I'm going, oh my gosh, we've done this many, many times. That's not something I learned in church for sure. That's not something they were teaching in Sunday school.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm having this revelation, this memory of the fact that I've been dead before. Oh, wait a second. I'm in charge of this. That's how this works. And so I had to choose in that moment how I was going to experience this death. And so being fully aware of the fact that I had died before and looking at that car that was going to hit me at 75 miles an hour, now, which is now frozen completely. It's like standstill on pause. And I'm like, that's really going to hurt. And, this body is going to take a serious blow because it was coming directly for the driver's side. And I just went, yeah, no, I don't need to be in the body for that. And next thing, there was this sound, this low drone. I play music over here in Ireland. I play Irish, the Bowron, the Irish drum.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite instruments is the pipes, the Ilian pipes.
Oh, that's cool.
I love when when he's filling up that bag and those pipes are getting ready to play. There's this amazing low drone, and that's the closest sound I can give you to compare. You're a musician, you'll get it. So that vibe is quite low, and as that, I'm literally hovering above my body, looking down. So, many years later, I've come to discover that vibration accompanies the soul or the spirit while it's encapsulated in the meat suit. It keeps us tethered to the plane.
Sorry, I gotta stop you there. You said meat suit. I love that. I love that little analogy. The body. But no, on a serious note, this is something I'm interested in. When that happens, what does that transition feel like? Does it just feel like you're walking into another room? Like you really don't feel nothing? It's just bam, it's there. You know what I'm getting at, right?
Say it again now.
So when you die like that, is it like an instant transition where you're like, oh, well, it's like you walk into another bedroom, the only thing that changes is the room, but you're alert the whole time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like walking from the bedroom to the bathroom.
Oh, that's what a lot of people have told me.
Yeah, it's the trauma that people have placed around the idea of what actually happens when we die it's just, that's man-made. Do you know, that's fear-based and it's not accurate.
Well, yeah.
And so, this is where I would tell people who've ever lost somebody in tragic circumstances, like if they were, they were tortured or they were shot, or if somebody went through a violent rape before death, or, any circumstances, to be honest. It doesn't matter what it looks like. There have been many people who've sat next to the bed of somebody who was dying a slow and agonizing death. Well, the body might give one appearance, but what the soul is actually experiencing is completely different. So that's something I want people to know, is that even if you've lost someone to the most tragic of circumstances, that this is the same across the board. We can manipulate time. Yeah. When we're back in that frame of mind where we know who and what we really are. And so, I literally paused, cars stood still. I'm sitting there with, 21 years of Mary Helen, the preacher's daughter, under my belt going, oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, I remember how this works.
Oh, that's insane.
There was no fear to it. There was no anything. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is incredible. I don't need to experience the impact of this because I already know what that feels like. I had a knowing that I already knew. So boom, there's that sound and I'm above. And the second I've changed position and who I really am, the essence of me, is now up and out of the body, I am looking down and the accident is unfolding beneath me. And so everything just whoosh, sped right up again. So I got to witness my own death. So I see the car slam into the side of my car. I watch my neck go through the window. I see my neck break. I see the seat fold up beneath me, glasses everywhere. Car spins through the intersection. And I'm just a spectator. And this is where it's really, really important, because so many people want to know this. Oh my gosh, are you not like going, oh, I don't want to be dead. I don't want to be dead. No. If you could picture, you and I were talking before the show started, and you were saying it was very hot where you are. Mm-hmm. If you picture that you'd been out in the yard and you were hot and sweaty and nasty, you'd been mowing the lawn, you go inside and you peel off those gross clothes and you throw them into the washing machine, and you go up and you have the best shower.
Oh, wow.
.com, right? The last thing you are thinking about is the clothes in the washing machine.
I know, it's true.
Exactly what it's like to leave the body.
That's a great analogy. I've been a believer all my life, of course, but I've just always wondered, and what you just said was the best, that's the best way I think I've heard it described, and now it completely makes sense. I get it. Yeah, who cares about the clothes in the wash? You're worrying about that nice shower now.
Yeah.
You're cleansing yourself, essentially.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's like you're back in this space where you're literally being bathed in frequency. And so the gist of all the work that I do today is all based on frequency and light, because that's all we are. Is we're different points on the same beam of light.
Yeah.
And if you can learn how to speed up, slow down, go sideways, upside down with frequency, you can literally control everything about the experience that you're having right now. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are, because you have a deep understanding of the fact that you didn't come here for things to be perfect, easy. You came here to have the experience that you needed.
Yeah.
And not somebody else determined that you needed it. You decided that you need it. You are now in the role of creator. So it's really, really interesting, because it all comes back to you in a split second.
That is, I'm kind of speechless how actually cool that sounds. It's really, that's just really fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is. And I don't think, we can understand it, but we can't until we've actually been through it, like yourself. And I think
that's what I'm doing my whole life, is trying to get people into the understanding without having to die. Imagine that.
Yeah, well, someone gave me another analogy, because it's hard to comprehend. They were saying, imagine Imagine you're on a 2D picture on the wall. You have no sense of the 3D reality, of the third dimension. That's what it's like. It doesn't mean it's not there. It's just you're in a 2D world and you can't imagine a 3-dimensional world being 2D. That's kind of like what they said. They said it's there. It's just on your plane and your frequencies and stuff. We can't see it yet being in the physical now.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It is. It's amazing, and that's why I don't really fret about too much. And when I do, I kind of make it up sometimes. When you're a parent and your kids are like doing something and you're supposed to act really, really upset about it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard when how it's going to play out.
Well, it's funny. We have a daughter, and when she used to do stuff, of course you got to be a parent and get upset, but then I'd walk away acting like I was mad, and under my breath I'm like, man, I used to get away with that. No, I used to say to myself, man, I used to do that same crap as a kid, and I was laughing under my breath. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that, but then as the parent, you got to take a different approach, but it's still, oh yeah, that's very cool.
But it's interesting because you can actually change the dynamic of the family constellation by looking at that and going, is it a rite of passage, or is this actually happening for me? Because we're all fractals of the same whole. Am I actually seeing a projection of my 19-year-old self right now doing something that me in this body at 19 wanted to do but couldn't? Oh, it's so amazing because then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I'm a time traveler.
I get it.
Yes, you are.
Wow. So you had your NDE in the car crash. Now, this happened down in Charleston, South Carolina, you said, right?
Right.
Off Highway 17. Yep. Darn Highway 17. So going in from this, so I'm just going, don't mind me. I got some bullet points here in front of me. What did this experience lead into? Because I know you're a chiropractor,
right?
Healing abilities and all that. What actually came first after this experience? Like, where did that first lead you?
All right. Well, so there I was, freshly dead.
There you were. In your, out of your meat suit.
Exactly. And so one of the things that happened was when I arrived into that space, I was greeted by two beings of my own, and they waited very patiently for me to kind of settle back into myself and the surroundings. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, these are my guides. Guys, we all have them. It doesn't matter how alone you feel or think you are. We've all got them. Okay. And it was incredible because they patiently waited for me to remember. And then when I did, they accompanied me to, it's so cliche, but to the life review. But the life review was so cool because if you can picture a 3D, like an IMAX cinema.
Yeah.
That's how the life review plays out. Not in linear time. It's happening concurrently. So picture you, the essence of who you are is in the center. And I'm like 4 years old getting that kitchen table talk. I'm 12 years old winning Living History Day. I'm 17 years old drunk and getting raped. I am 21 years old going through a car crash. I am 10 years old getting my first dog, all at the same time. Mind blown.
Wow.
They deconstruct. It's the first thing they do in order to get you to remember who and what you really are, is they deconstruct the illusion of time. It gives me goosebumps even talking about it. And I talked about it 1,001 times, it just blows me away. You're looking at all of this happening simultaneously. And so all that you think you want to become, you've already been. And all that you've been in the past, is who you are today. And it's just incredible to know that all of it matters and none of it matters all at the same time.
So there's a much, much bigger piece of the picture that we don't see.
Oh, absolutely. And we agree. We make that agreement with someone, else, and that someone else is our real selves. we like, oh, religion creates, there's always the God figure, and coming from where we come from, of course, out of the Bible Belt, it's anything that's not Christian is blasphemous and all. And not that it was wrong. It's that it's so small. That's the best way I can describe it.
Oh, it's indeed tiny. It is. Because I grew up in that, I told you I originally Ohio, but then I mainly grew up in southeast North Carolina. And the Bible Belt is pretty big down there, but when you look at the larger picture, there's more than just that out there, in the world. And it's, is God real? Of course. But the question is, God is so much bigger than, God doesn't want to be put into a box. That's how I look at it. Don't put him into a box. There's so much more to it beyond our imagination. And you got a glimpse of that, just, like the entrance of how amazing it is. And
then at the same time, you also see the relevance of the boxes.
Yeah.
You can't put the divine into the box, but see, we've created this thing too, where we box in, we talk about boxes here, and it's like, it's almost like we've created this hierarchy. Oh, you're in the box, therefore you're left out of the box, therefore I'm more involved. We jump from box to box to box in order to frame up and give ourselves an outline with which to have an experience. So if we're going to study something, we immerse ourselves in the box of that until such time that we no longer need that box. And in that space and out of the box and out of the body, you're like, oh, I get how this works. All the hardship, all the moaning I was doing about how tough life is and da-da-da-da-da. I created that for myself. I put those boxes there. Because when I made those plans, when I unfolded the idea of the life that I would lead, I knew who I really was. I was fully empowered. And so when people go, I would have never chosen cancer. I would have never chosen to have lost my spouse. You did.
Yeah.
And that agreement was something, because eternal, divine, omnipotent, fully trusting, absolutely unwavering in the knowing of who and what you really are. That's who made the decision. Yeah. Not finite me who thinks I'm going to sit on a cloud next to the right hand of God. Where's the judgment? Where's that cutoff line?
Yeah.
So when you sit back and actually look at it, which is a bigger crime? You steal 5 cents or $5 million. It depends on the intention, and it's so incredible, this BS we sell ourselves to make ourselves feel better. And I'm just sitting here laughing, going, guys, it all works out okay.
Yeah. I thought of the same thing. See, and a lot of people, the way I take it, so I'll tell you personally, but I've had family members like my dad and some other family members have near-death experiences, like where they were completely flatlined. And they said it's absolutely, they were saying things similar to you, and it's so identical. But the first thing they told me is like you and I talking right now in this reality, they said this is like the dream. They said over there's the real, like the most real thing you could ever imagine. But they were saying almost identical to what I know it's hard to put into words, but it's almost identical, and where it starts to actually make sense now, because I know you're saying it, but when you actually know personal individuals like my dad or other folks that have had these experiences, I mean, come on, it's so obvious. It's just, but people like making up their own comfort thing unless even if they haven't experienced what you all have.
Right.
But I know, like what you said, everything works out just fine. It really does. And it's, I think everybody does want to be in their comfort zone. They kind of create this picture of what they want. Mm-hmm. But what they don't get is it's
people to connect with that.
Well, yeah, and I understand you can't connect to something like what you have unless you've experienced it, So we try to make up something, I believe, something that we can comprehend. But when you've been there like you have, you get it and you don't need to really do that anymore because it's all, you understand.
No, well, it's like once you get it, then, you know, if you choose to come back in, and I did, obviously here I sit, you know, you come back in and you're agreeing to be here to give other people a leg up. And it's because it's like the great reveal. It's, you know, I tell people, you know, when you sit down and play a friendly competitive game of Monopoly, mm-hmm. you know, you're not really the shoe. I know. I hate to break it to you. I'm not really the dog. She's not really the car.
Yeah.
You know, we agree to set aside our perception of reality in order to immerse ourselves in the game. You know, $500 isn't really pink. I can't afford Park Place. You know,
you're going to jail.
Right. And we go into this kind of game and the illusion and have no problem doing that. And we're getting hot and bothered and we're sweating and we're bidding against each other and putting each other in jail and we're competitive and we're laughing and we're playing the game.
Yeah.
But who we really are knows that we're just playing a game. And so, you know, we get presented, like right now here in Ireland, a huge experience is getting ready to happen. Like it's been a very interesting and very challenging pandemic. And, you know, for lots of,
of course, it's hit everybody hard.
I've had the time of my life and it feels almost blasphemous to say it.
So have I.
Right? So what's getting ready to happen now is here in Ireland. Next week, there is the great debate is happening. And now people are starting to go,
what debate is that?
So as they open the public sector, the restaurants and all, mm-hmm. they are now asking for proof of vaccination.
Oh, hell no.
So now family and friends are going to have to ask family and friends for proof of vaccination or refuse them the basic service of whatever it is. And this is going to be so fascinating because those who have made decisions without doing homework or research or whether it was fear-based or whether they actually fully believed in it, they are now faced with having to actually withhold services or discriminate against someone that they might care very deeply about. And there is the big moral dilemma getting ready to hit a lot of people. And I am sitting back in utter fascination as I watch this. And
that's so crazy. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Else on the planet, but front row and center for this. And, you know, and the best way that I can do is I just teach. I don't judge. I'm just teaching. And I'm like, I would put a placard on the window of my office that said unvaccinated, not welcome, just because I'm not vaccinated, not welcome, just because I'm unvaccinated.
Yeah.
You know? But that's exactly what they're getting ready to do to me next week.
Well, you know, I got to tell you something here. So Washington State and Oregon, we're back to 100%. They lifted everything. I'm like, you know what? They're like, well, but what if the government does it again? I'm like, you think the people are going to put up with that? Because the way I look at it is like this. The government can only do what the people go along with. You know, and if the people push back, what's the government? They really can't do much. But what gets me is, like, I go into Costco now or these other stores, and it's kind of a loophole because they're like, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. I'm like, well, technically, I got my tetanus shot. You said vaccinated. So it's
right.
Yeah, they're like, well, you didn't say COVID. And that's interesting. I'm going to have to check that out because how's that? Oh, you know there's going to be lawsuits over there.
Oh gosh, yeah, this is I wouldn't be anywhere else. Everybody's like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world.
No, front row seat.
Actually, so much fun to watch because you are watching people
I just hope it doesn't turn into a thing like there was with the Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, the whole debacle crap.
And what if it does?
God, that's crazy.
People consider themselves too evolved ever to let something like that happen, but look how far we've come now. They go, oh God, we'd never get back to where we were in World War II, where people were alienating or isolating people based on personal choice or based on religion or whatever. We're right back there.
You know why? Because the average person lets it happen. A lot of people are weak to say, I'm not putting up with this.
Oh, yeah. But because we're comfortable, they don't realize that 70 years ago, the very same thing could have happened, that people are, look, hey, I can still go to the shop across the road. I'm not worried about whether you can or not, you know?
Of course.
And this is how it happened. And here we sit on the precipice of the same exact thing. It's utterly fascinating.
Ireland's probably like, you'd think Brexit was cool to watch. Check this out. That's how I picture it. Well, I hope it works out. I really do. Because you know what? No matter where you're from, I know it's a tough thing, but no one should have to go through those type of decisions.
Sure they should. How do we grow? How else do we learn?
Well, that's true.
You know, of course they should. And, you know, people who preach one thing and are now confronted with the moral dilemma of what if somebody in family can't?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to take away all of their rights because they're not able. They have to face that, and they might have to be the one who delivers the blow. But I want to eat in that restaurant. I'm sorry, Granny, I can't serve you.
Oh, that's crazy.
What oh man, the opportunities abound.
It's okay if you say it.
Yeah, when I say it like that, it sounds kind of cool.
Well, you know what? This is a load of. So I want to go into something with you. So when you had your NDE and all these experiences growing, I know you have great healing powers, and I know you're one of Europe's actually most sought after metaphysical healers. But at the same time, I know you're a chiropractor. Is it so did you become a chiropractor first because you didn't know how to use the healing abilities just yet and you needed to find an outlet?
Okay, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, I gotcha. So here's me. I've just graduated from college. I'm ABC in Florence, Myrtle Beach. I was in communications and graphic design and television, right? So bang, you break your neck, you die, and next thing, the dead grandfather turns up and goes, "We're sending you to chiropractic school." And I'm like, "Excuse me? I've literally just gotten out 20-something, you know, I've been in school all my life, dude."
Man, I gotta go back.
Yeah, no thanks. And so and I'm going, what is it, chiropractic? And I'm like, hang on a second. They make fun of those guys. So I'm like, are you still there?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to cut you off. I used to make fun of chiropractors. I used to make fun of them.
Yeah, so they used to make, they make fun of those guys. And so my grandfather, Judge, was a surgeon. So I'm like, well, hang on. If I've got to go back to school, why can't I go become a surgeon like you?
Yeah.
And he says that I would understand as the gifts unfolded that were promised to me while I was, in the great beyond, I would understand because I needed to learn a vitalistic approach to the human body. I needed to know the tripod. I needed to know the mind, the body, and the spirit. I needed to understand that the human body wasn't something that you just take apart, its pieces and parts. I needed to understand the concept of dis-ease as opposed to disease and how they connect. And I needed to understand that the body is here in service to the spirit. So to a world where we're so used to medicating everything if it hurts or taking it out if it's broken or doing rather than finding other ways around it and listening to the way that the body speaks to us, it was essential that I took this approach so that I could understand how to use the ability that was going to be coming in, which was that of I can manipulate energy, frequency.
Yeah.
So I'm able to go in and touch somebody's body and download their story. It's like downloading a hard drive. And I can go in and if allowed, if invited into the story, and that's essential. And I'm not, doing something that changes, alters, or slows down the path that they've set out for themselves, that I'm there to lift and assist. That's what I do. I can manipulate frequency. I can change a cell from an unhealthy cell to a healthy cell. I've just isolated COVID. I have this weird, I came back with synesthesia. So I can.
Synesthesia. What is that?
So like music plays, you see color.
Oh, okay.
I can smell disease. I can hear a brain tumor. And so in utilizing these, this kind of hardwiring where my wires got crossed, I'm able to go and isolate these different frequencies. And so that became, that was what was to come. And so knowing the human body inside and out with reverence rather than with it being, a vehicle that you just take the pieces and parts out that's the last resort. Understanding how the mind, the body, the spirit, the innate intelligence, and how the soul is actually that spark, that little rivulet of energy that ignites us into action. Because anybody who's ever seen a dead body goes, oh, is that what that looks like? It's just a bag laying there completely unanimated. And you realize, oh, that's not the human spirit. And so that's what I came back to do. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow. Very interesting. So, it's funny. I used to make fun of chiropractors until one day, everything was sore. And my wife's like, go see one. I'm like, yeah, they're not going to do nothing. Boy, was I wrong, girlfriend. I walked out of that chiropractor like the brand new guy. I was like, I was so wrong. They fixed something I was moaning about for like 3 months. And I was taking medicine. I went to chiro. Now, it took me like 2 sessions. But after the first session, I'm like, okay, this stuff is the real deal. And it's true. They realigned everything. It was great.
I'm so surprised, when it's like, and the ones who usually poo-poo chiropractic are the ones who didn't get better after one go. I'm like, hey, let's get a Weight Watchers salad and drop that 20 pounds you need. It doesn't work like that. The body is something that you've got. Oftentimes we get people as a last resort and they are so used up and abused at that stage that it's going to take some time to undo. And also, consequently, an Olympic athlete who's, their soft tissue is going to take the same 4 weeks to heal as yours. And, we've lost such the connection with what the body is actually capable of doing.
Yeah.
The second child gets we don't like to think that they have a fever. The fever's burning out all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
We've educated right out of the population the miracle of the human body.
That is actually true. That's completely true.
That's now the pharmaceutical companies. And where do we find ourselves? In the middle of a fake pandemic. Do you know?
Oh, you know what? I know it too. I know. I agree.
Yeah, I have COVID. I don't think there's not COVID. That's not what I'm saying at all. But COVID is a blanket term. The same way, like in my world, when someone comes in and says, I have fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is a blanket term used by the medical profession to cover a series of symptoms that they don't know where they come from.
Yep.
COVID, when I got it, I went through and went with bioresonance with my good friend Angelica, she had the equipment that we could break the thing down vibrationally in LA. And I was able to isolate all the components of what this thing consisted of. And I knew from day one it had been engineered. And now all of a sudden, surprise, guys, looks like we were messing around with something and it went wrong and got out.
Well, you know what? And I don't want to get into politics, but I know back when like Trump was president and all that, they're like, yeah, this is man-made. Everyone was criticizing it. It's funny. A few weeks ago, they started talking about, yeah, that's what it's looking like now. I'm like, duh. And
it is.
But the way I look at it's like this with the COVID deal. I look at it as another aspect. How easy can populations be controlled?
Oh, absolutely.
And if they can be controlled this easily, it was this like a test run of something to come.
Well, how easily can they be reduced as well?
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
When the people footing the bill are the biggest proponents of 2/3 population reduction in the next decade, you got to ask yourself a few questions.
Well, and everyone laughs at that, but you know what? It's a fact. It's public. Just no one ever goes and reads it.
Yeah. I know.
So here's something for you, Doc.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you come from Virginia and South Carolina all the way to Ireland unless you were looking for leprechauns and gold? How did you get to Ireland?
I was looking for ancient symbols that the leprechauns were keeping hostage. No, started my last year of school. One of the things that happened is I started seeing these weird symbols in my vision, and they would not leave me alone. Do you remember that scene from Ghost? Remember the movie Ghost, and Whoopi Goldberg is like,
and Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore.
Yeah, he's doing, I'm Henry VIII, I am, and he's saying he won't leave her alone.
Oh yeah.
So it was kind of like that. So these symbols over and over and over again, waiting for me to do something. And so I start writing them down. And finally, when I have what looks like an entire alphabet, there are 21 of them with a primer symbol as well. What I realize is that they come from an ancient alphabet called the Goet alphabet, which is pre-Atlantean. So they're over 13,500 years old. But what I knew about these symbols was that while I wrote them down as kind of a 2D flat iconograph, they were actually 3 and 4 dimensional holograms and storehouses of information. Oh my God, what a load of rubbish. Oh yeah? Why don't you go back into George Washington's day and hand him a USB key and tell him it's got a whole book on it?
Yeah, I get it.
So just because somebody can't conceptualize of it doesn't mean it's not real.
True.
So I knew that I had to come here, and that part of that, the next leg of the journey was here in Ireland for me. And so I came here. I set up my practice on July 7th. I moved to Ireland July 4th, 1999.
Wow, you've been there since 99.
And then I opened my practice July 7th, 99. And I have been here in and out ever since. Now obviously, now I'm covering my practice at the moment because my doctor just left. But usually I'd be out on book tour and speaking and doing all that kind of stuff. But I still have the office here because I have families in here that have been with me from day one.
Oh yeah,
and I will continue to provide that service for them. So yeah, that's how I got here, and it was so interesting. When I first arrived to Ireland, I'll go to an ancient megalithic tomb site, and here sit some of the symbols, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So it turns out that this alphabet is actually composed of symbols not ever found in one place. This is why they're found all across the globe. They come from a time when travel across the globe was quite easy. And you might find 3 in Norway, and you might find 5 in Ireland, and 2 are in South America, and 4 in Arizona. And
correct.
Like, this is how it's put together. So I've spent my entire adult life working on extracting the frequency, because in that frequency is prehistory, from 13,784 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
Give or take a year. And so I'm working on my opus, my opus. I've got nearly 10 books at this stage, I think. And
wow.
The big I'm doing is called Apotheosis, which is, man discovering his own divinity. And so Apotheosis begins in my own lifetime that I can remember, at the time of the Great Flood. And this is not the biblical Great Flood. This is the Great Flood that was the last to take down the last incarnation of Atlantis. And Atlantis, oh my God, whatever. You wait, in about 300 years, people will speak of Ireland the way they speak of Atlantis. And, it's the kind of thing where just because we can't see it in front of us, oh, it's mythical, it's been made up or whatever. There were Atlantean populations all over the world. They were called Poseid at the time. But, the very same way that England colonized different places all around the world, Atlanteans were the same. There was an Atlantis proper, and then there were colonies or civilizations of Atlantis. And Ireland would have been part of the land bridge that connected continental Atlantis or Poseid with continental Europe. So it's a really, really interesting place to be in order to uncover those things.
Well, going back to what you said, everybody hears the lost city of Atlantis, kind of like some mythical thing. No, it was real. And what you said about Ireland, yeah, that's true. I mean, people don't understand. Countries like Ireland and other countries will be gone someday, underwater, and everyone think, oh, that never existed. That's like your, fantasy. But no,
right.
It was a real place. And so that's going to be That's going to be interesting. And now we already know researchers. I mean, there's already proof of Atlantis now. But some people still think, oh, no, there's not. No, there is. You're just in denial about it.
Right. And I mean, like every time I fly home from Europe to America, you know how you can switch on your little TV on the plane to the map?
Yeah.
And as you're flying over the Atlantic, there's this huge underwater formation called Dolphin's Ridge. Mm-hmm. And that's just a mountaintop in what was northeast continental Atlantis. So if you look at the little islands that are owned by Azores, those are just the tops, those little bits that remained above water. Those are the tops of the highest mountain peaks.
Yeah, that's actually true, because if you look at that map, you can see it goes down the whole center. It like goes from all the way from like Greenland just straight down to almost the very South Pole. It's pretty cool.
The positioning of the Azores then on top of that.
Yeah. So fascinating.
Yeah. Isn't it just? I love it.
I love it too. You know, there's so much interesting stuff out there.
Yeah. And so the big thing right now is that people need to realize that everybody's not living the same version of reality. People listen to my stuff or they read my books and they're like, yeah, that's well for you. You know, you have this, that, and the other. And I'm going, you know what? No, it's just it's a choice of a way that you want to live. And I have magic in my life every single day. Like, I mean, bizarre stuff. And it's incredible. And I write books about it to show people that it's possible, not just to say, you know, look what I can do. It's look what you can do. If you'll step out of your way for a second, and that's why I'm a glorified window washer. All I'm doing is wiping people's windows clean, see out for themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what a healer actually is someone who's removing the muck and the dirt and the grime so that the person can realize how awesome they are themselves. And, you know, that's what I do with frequency is rather than, you know, okay, when I was in my 20s and I could, you know, touch somebody and suddenly they're cancer free. Oh, my Lord, did my ego love that. But luckily I grew up and realized, you know, boy, that makes me feel good. But I took something away from them that they weren't emotionally prepared to deal with. And now it's back, you know. And so when you create the tools that you can give to somebody else and empower them to do this for themselves, that's everything. And so that's why I've spent years and years working with the sound engineer in Los Angeles, a guy called Greg Papania, mm-hmm. and he created the Signs Music site. That's Signs, SINES, signsmusic.com. And oh my gosh, it's just a wealth of information because like we would talk frequency and I'd go, okay, this is what this sounds like, or this is how you can alter this mood, or this is how, and he's a genius. He just generates pieces and there's constantly adding to them. And so like when I called him the other day and I went, Greg, I pitched COVID. I know why they put me back in. I know why my doctor left. I know why I had to come back in and work 6 days a week. I have had my hands for the last year on so many people who've had COVID or who've had the COVID vaccine. And I, with this weird ability of synesthesia, have been able to pitch it. And so now we've been able to match the frequency. And guess what happens then? When you pluck the E string on a guitar on one side of the room, the E string vibrates in the guitar on the other side of the room. And so when you expose the COVID virus or the protein from the vaccination to the frequency that's going to nullify it, guess what happens? Boom. It all implodes.
Oh, that's cool. I definitely need to check that out, including the listeners. That's fascinating. Wow.
But the beauty of understanding that the earth is a dichotomy of dark and light, you get why all that. That's why I'm fascinated by what's happening. I don't need for everything to work out perfectly and okay. And, you know, people are like, well, don't you just wish for your happiness for your kids? And I'm like, no. That's not what I wish. I wish for their souls to have whatever they came here for. And if that includes hardship, rock on.
Yeah. You know? Well, that's what the end result is. It's about the soul in the end. Everything in life, yeah, it can be bad. It can be good. But at the end of the day, you know what? Life is so short. It's like what connections, how nourished is the soul? And to come here and do what we're meant to do or what our purpose was. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you know what? That's the mic drop moment. And it's kind of, guys, what do you have to worry about? Everything and nothing, all at the same time.
So can I ask you something? I know you're a big writer. You got quite a few books out there. What got you into the whole writing?
Would you believe that I wrote the first 3 books, which were Promised, Circles of Light, and The Land Beyond the River, because I wanted my 2 daughters to have a manual because they were showing at a very early age signs of the shine, of the gift, know? And so I wanted them, their dad left when they were 1 and 3, so it's just been us, the 3 Musketeers, ever since.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to understand what it was all about. And so I was like, well, chicken, you better start writing this down. And so that's how it turned into 1 book, and then it turned into 2 books, and then it was the 3rd book, and then it just kept going. And once you told that story, you realize that you've got so many other stories to tell. And so it was a beautiful way of expressing something that was really hard for some people to get their heads around, in a way that I guess, people, the biggest compliment I get is that I'm a blue collar writer. I write in a way that people can relate to.
Yeah. See, some writing, when you read it, it's like, I can't understand this. But when someone writes kind of like how you do, you get it, cause some authors and writers, I'm like, I can't even read the first sentence in the book. It's, the big words, or what are you talking about?
That's for the author's benefit. To be honest, it's not, it's, some people will hide behind, well, it teaches people to grow. And I'm not saying I'm writing on a 2nd grade level.
Oh yeah.
But I will write in a way that is conversational, that it feels like the person, it's such a compliment when someone goes, oh my gosh, I really felt like you were just talking to me. And so that's why I'm mad about audiobooks. And so I did a really cool thing recently. So my last big book, was called Understanding is the New Healing. And so what's really cool about this book is it's the first audio in Audible history to be backed by these healing frequencies and brainwave states.
Really?
So when I'm reading the stories about my different healing sessions, Greg engineered the brainwave states to alter the person's ability to perceive the story, and laced it with the frequencies that would allow the individual, if they connected with anything and resonated with some aspect of the story, the frequency to allow them to release it and heal it is backed in the music behind my voice.
Oh, I got to check that out. That is so smart.
Yeah, it's wicked. And so, it's not very often on this planet you get to be the first at anything. So I was really excited to do that.
Well, you know what? That's important because, you've probably seen these apps or these sites where, you can listen to different frequencies for different things. I have never heard an audiobook where someone's talking about a certain thing with that frequency behind it. That is so clever.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's just like people walk away and they're just like, that was it's an immersive experience. So you're moving out of the 3D. And this was one of the big things with COVID for me. I was trying to explain, guys, this is incredible. Do you realize what's happening? We're moving from 3D. We blew right past 4D. And we are now functioning in a 5D state. And what that 5th dimension is for people is choice. They are learning at a very rapid pace that everything experientially for them is based on choice. You make this choice, the next thing happens. You don't make this choice, this happens. And that all of the choices that they make are completely empowered. And when they realize the power of creation and destruction that they have, they realize how important choice is. And it's just, it's just so rich and oozy and squeezy and juicy. I love it.
So this is just, I'm just curious. Since you started doing your frequency work, like when you at the very beginning till now, has your, like, has your mind also been blown by let me rephrase it. Have you learned things that just like you never even knew like
Absolutely.
existed or were possible that just blew your mind? Like, wow, I didn't even know this.
And that's why I write so many books. I can't keep up with the stories. So I keep writing them so that people can have those same experiences. And one of the things I loved about understanding is the new healing is that it's other people's experiences. It's my interaction and interpretation of being invited into other people's stories. Because it's one thing when you're like, oh, that's great, you can heal, and you have all these abilities to see things before they happen, and I'm like, yeah, but look what this guy did,
Yeah.
And I love that book because it's telling the stories of our fellow travelers. And so one of the last chapters in the books is it's called Jerusalem, and
Jerusalem.
That we love a guru, man.
Yes, we do.
We love a guru, and people will try and put me there, and I'm like, I'll fart or light a cigarette or something. Yeah. Don't put that on me. Don't put that on me. That's not what I'm here for. And you realize that you already are that which you seek. You will never, ever seek to put that status of guru outside of yourself again.
Yeah. Very fascinating stuff. So if our audience didn't hear that, it's called Understanding is the New Healing, which is the audio book. So I'm definitely, so where can, I know we're going to have all the links below and all the descriptions. They can check all your stuff out. But, so is that on like Audible? Is it on the iTunes store? Like, all that?
All that jazz.
It is. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. And that's, so that's fun. And then, as we come to a close, today being the last day of Pride Month.
Yeah.
I've just finished another little book that I'm so pleased. That's what I was showing you before we started the show. It was in today's paper in my little town.
Oh,
here.
Yeah, that's right. So correct me if I'm wrong, it's the new preteen gender identity series, right?
That's it. Yep.
Is it called, so correct me if I'm wrong, Hugh in the Matinee?
No, Hugh and the Manatee.
Oh, I'm stupid. Matinee. No, it ain't no movie. I'm stupid. Hugh and the Manatee. Yeah. So can you give us an overview about that?
Yeah. So Hugh's he's a little boy, loves sparkles, and he wear the tiara at lunch break, then go out and play football with the other kids. And he's he's a dynamic swimmer. He's very popular with his friends, and he has two bullies who've been plaguing him all his life, and so they all end up down at the springs for the last swim of the season. And this magical pink manatee comes up under the water, puts Hugh in a bubble and puts his two bullies in a bubble because they've caught him down by the water's edge with his shoes off and his nails are painted. And that is it. They're just, hee-hawing all over the place. And so the manatee bubbles them off, takes them on an underwater adventure where they meet all of these underwater aquatic creatures who are gender fluid. And shows how natural this is, how it occurs in nature. Hey, the daddy seahorse carries the babies, not the mommy. Oh, look at that race fish over there with a face full of makeup. It's actually male, and it used to be a female. And it gives example after example of how, for millions and millions of years, these species have survived by being able to change their identity, change their gender. And so it takes something that we've made that's not real. It's people are just choosing to do that. It's not part of, doesn't matter if they're choosing to do it or not doing it. All the cool creatures that have survived for millennia are able to do it. And so it teaches kids from an early age compassion, and the manatee uses frequency to back each lesson when it's teaching the bullies and showing them yet another example of the sea spider daddy who's carrying the babies on his legs. But and it backs each lesson taught with a frequency. And so the kids are being introduced to frequency. And the kicker at the end of it though is that Hugh has gone through the same changes as the bullies has. He's watching and learning with the manatee, and he can't understand. He goes, but wait a minute, they're the ones who are bullying me and making my life a nightmare. And if they changed, and because at the end they stand up for you, he's like, what happened to me? And the manatee says, you allowed them to change. So it teaches that the frequency of love is what allows us to allow people to be fallible and to redeem themselves. And that is what love is.
Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. And going back to your point, a lot of people might not realize this, but there are tons of species on the planet that can go back and forth between genders. And a lot of people didn't realize that. I didn't realize that till I was watching the Discovery Channel. It was it wasn't Animal Planet, but it was some show like that about different species. And I was like, that is so fascinating. Even I didn't know that, and I learned something within 2 minutes. And a lot of people, go out and do your research, and you'll be surprised about that. That's actually normal.
Exactly. I mean, really, with the Industrial Revolution and with the onset and domination of Catholicism and of that version of Christianity, when we started making things, this is good, this is bad, this is sinful, this is not, that's kind of when all that happened. Because if you look back in the day, like go back to Rome, everybody was loving everybody,
Well, my wife and I were in Rome on a cruise quite a few years ago. It's right there in front of your face. You can't miss it.
It's just there, so it's actually a really small window of people who've taken over a very large portion of the population, so it's these kind of limited beliefs that people have, but isn't that the case with everything?
That is the case with everything. All of us have our own different beliefs and stuff, but you know what? Way I tell people, it all comes down to one thing: love.
Exactly.
Love one another. Just think, if everybody was the same, this world would be a boring place.
Amen.
Wouldn't it? Oh my gosh, it'd be boring. Too boring. But no, our listeners, so your website is maryhelenhensley.com, correct?
That's it, yes.
We'll have that below. And I just want to ask you, is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to mention, or is there anything you would like to tell our audience? I mean, there's just so much information. That's why they need to check out your sites, your books, you name it.
Start there. I'm not sure when this comes out. When does this?
Oh, it's being published today.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So, if anybody's into the whole kind of the fun conspiracy coast to coast type stuff,
like Art Bell, George Norrie.
Coast to coast it'll be midnight, July 8th, your time.
So you're going to be on Coast to Coast, right, George Norrie?
Yeah, that's next.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out. And our audience, check that out. Oh, yeah, Coast to Coast. I tell you what, without going off topic, that's what our show goes over everything. We do UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, phenomenon.
It's all part of it.
It's all interesting because it's great, and people need to hear, like even your story, people need to hear this stuff. You don't get this in the mainstream, but people need to hear it. You need an outlet.
Absolutely. And like I see it, like for me, it's normalized that like I love my life because all the stuff that other people, things that somebody might experience one time in a lifetime, I might see 10 times a day. Do you know? It's just normal in my life. I have people who come in and talk to me openly about the UFO they saw in their backyard, or, my brother he worked in Area 51, like I have a really, really interesting perspective on life, and it's just, it's so much fun.
Well, without going into depth, when I was in the military, I knew I didn't get in depth with these individuals, but, when I got out, I was some friends with these high rank officers. I'm like, have you ever flown in the Groom Lake, Area 51, which for the average person doesn't know, it's just northwest of Las Vegas, just right up there. And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, have you seen things that, you can't explain? And, you know what they always say? What do you think? It's not a yes or no, but it's like, hello, yes.
Yeah, exactly. My brother was a U-2 pilot,
Oh yeah.
And so it's just so funny. I just ask and he just smiles.
but you know what that smile is. You know how to read your own brother. See, that's the thing.
But it's so funny because, my mom is still living in Virginia. She's just fit as a fiddle and she's 92. And it's the funniest thing because she'll talk about, well, when you used to wake up with those marks all over your body, blah, blah, blah. She's been great. And that's how I've written so many books because she kept notebooks of literally everything I ever said.
Oh, bless her heart.
Oh my gosh. So she, the preacher's wife of 60 something years is the biggest believer because she's seen it with her own eyes.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing. And I'll leave you with this story because it's actually one of my very favorite because, I've given you a good picture of what my dad was like and, world champion weightlifter and the big football player and minister and all. And, he had his ideas of people went to heaven and people went to hell and, very much so. But not a fire and brimstone kind of guy. And he died of Alzheimer's and he was in the nursing home and we were having a particularly bad time with him. And Dad was a brilliant speaker, brilliant public speaker. And he was having a really, really tough day in particular. And he hadn't spoken in months. He just lost the ability. He could only mumble. And my mom and I were in the nursing home with him and he was shuffling around and, he'd go into the bathroom and wash his hands for the 800th time and shuffle around. And so funny that a man who dedicated his entire life to God, his entire life to the teachings of the word, and he could not lie down flat in the bed because he was terrified he would die. And you look at this going, dude, what's that all about? You get to this part, the most important part, bar getting here. And your religion that you've given your entire life over to is not here to support you. I don't understand that. And it perplexed me always. And so this one evening, Dad is shuffling around and all of a sudden he goes over and he gets into the bed and he lies down. And my mom shoots that head around and looks at me and she's like, oh my gosh, is this it? And one of the things that I am able to do is I can see the auric field or energy field around people. And one of the biggest misconceptions about death is like that it's like when lights are turning down, it's exactly the opposite. Everything starts speeding up. The soul is prepping to go back to its original space. It's like fireworks. It's amazing. So while the body looks like it's dying, field around fire. It's electric. It's such a privilege. And so Dad lies down and Mom's looking at me and I go, I don't see any fireworks, Mom. I don't think this is it. I think he's having an experience. And so Dad starts reaching up to the ceiling. Now, mind you, he has not spoken in months. And suddenly he's clear as a bell going, I can see it. And we were like, what? What's going on? And he's like, I can see it. And I was like, Dad?
Wow.
And he hadn't known who we were forever, and he was like, I can see it. And I said, what is it? And he goes, the land beyond the river. That's why I named my third book that. And I'm like, well, what's it like? And he goes, it's beautiful, sugar, and pats me on the hand. He goes, it's more beautiful than anything you ever wrote about.
Oh my, well, see, that is an amazing.
Oh God. Oh wait, it gets better. And so I'm like, well, tell me about it. What do you see? And he goes, Mama, I see Mama, and she's so beautiful. And I'm like, and he's like, she looks so young. And, my mom's just sitting there quietly nodding. And I'm like, all right, Dad, that's incredible. And then he just freezes. And he's like, oh my gosh, Daddy's there. Now, this is the pivotal moment. For my father, according to his dogma and his rules of Christianity that he lived by, self-imposed as they were, his father had not made it to heaven. The choices that his father, my grandfather on his side, had made had meant that he would have not made it through the judgment and he would not have made it to heaven. And this bothered my dad all of his life.
But yet he was there.
He's sitting there and he's looking at my grandfather. He turns his head, and of everything I've ever experienced in my entire 52 years on this planet, this is the most profound moment. He turns to my mom and he goes, Helen, I've had it wrong all along. You can't mess this thing up. Everybody's welcome here.
Wow. That's deep.
And that's what I'm going to leave you with.
That is so, you know what? I got goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
Because your dad, he was in that state, and then, and see, here's the thing I want to say. It's like, if you're going to have your last words, why are you going to just say that when it's not real? You know what I mean? Your dad saw everything crystal clear. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
That says it all to me, you know. And does that mean that his life was wasted within the confines of the religion? No, that's the box that he needed to be in. And whilst inside that box, he changed so many people's lives for the better.
Well, yeah. And see, we're all in our own little box because we're meant to be, because we're probably like you or myself or other individuals. We have a purpose, you know, to help people, change people, or, how can I say it? Do our role in life. And that's what he was meant to do in his life. But at the end, he finally saw.
That's it.
Wow. Well, Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you. I just want to tell our audience, check out the descriptions below for all of her books, her websites, you name it. And coming up on July 8th, check her out with George Norrie on Coast to Coast AM. But Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, it's been an honor, so thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to have to crop that out.
You rock.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you have a great night.
You too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.